Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, maybe just put away those spreadsheets for a minute and picture this. Blinding white sand, water that shifts from like sapphire to aquamarine, the sound of a gentle Fijian breeze. We are diving headfirst into Fiji, that ultimate South Pacific archipelago. Today we're really cutting through the marketing gloss to answer one big actionable question for anyone planning a trip in 2026. Is this island paradise truly worth the price tag? And, if it is, how do you manage the cost?
It's a good question. And it means moving beyond just the beautiful photos and getting into the actual logistics. Our sources for this deep dive are pretty comprehensive. We've looked at everything from the geography of the islands, the culture, specific activities you'd want to do, right down to the cost details. And we've broken down expenses across the whole spectrum, for the traveler staying in a $40 hostel versus the one booking that $400 private villa.
Right, because you want to be well-informed quickly. Our goal here is to give you that definitive blueprint. This isn't just about listing prices, it's about strategic planning. We're linking geographical knowledge to budget needs, showing you exactly how much Fiji might cost you based on where you decide to, drop anchor.
And we should probably establish the currency context right away. It's the Fijian dollar, FJD.
Yeah.
For quick mental conversions, you can generally figure about 2 FJD to 1 US dollar, give or take, obviously, market fluctuations.
Okay, so roughly 2.1.
Yeah, keeping that ratio in mind will be super helpful as we talk about local prices.
Okay, let's unpack this then, and let's start with the foundational piece of the whole journey. Viti Levu. This is the gateway island. It's really the geographic and cultural core of Fiji.
Yeah, you can't really avoid Viti Levu, geographically or logistically. It's by far Fiji's largest island, which means, it offers the most diversity in terms of landscapes, infrastructure. Critically, it's where Nadi is, where pretty much every international flight lands. And it's also got Suva, the nation's capital, politically and historically.
Right.
A lot of travelers kind of see Viti Levu as just a quick transit point, maybe a night near the end port. But if you skip spending any real time there, you're actively bypassing the island's economic, cultural, and political grounding.
And I think if you skip the culture, the beaches start to look a bit like any other tropical beach, maybe.
Yeah.
The meaning gets lost. Suva, especially, offers a fantastic contrast to that resort life everyone pictures. It's a bustling, maybe slightly gritty capital city. You can really feel the weight of its colonial history there.
Exactly. Suva is where you find the most vibrant sort of local street life. You absolutely have to spend time in the municipal markets. It's just an explosion for the senses.
Yeah.
Mountains of exotic fruits, vegetables, the smell of fresh spices, the sounds of vendors and locals.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for real affordability and, genuine local interaction, the market is where it's at. It's like your classroom.
And beyond the market, Suva gives you that serious historical context. The Fiji Museum, right there at Thurston Gardens. You just can't miss it. It's got artifacts telling the whole story of Fiji, from ancient tribal stuff to European explorers, the colonial period. It really gives the rest of your trip the historical weight it deserves, I think.
And here's a key detail for the budget planner. That cultural immersion. It comes cheap. Entry to the Fiji Museum is incredibly reasonable, usually somewhere between, say, 5 and 10 Fijian dollars.
So what, like $2.50 to $5 US?
Exactly. For hours of history. It's a fantastic bargain and a great way to start getting your head around the island's past.
And the food scene in Suva, that really provides the essential budget strategy for your entire trip, doesn't it? If you're willing to find those small, no-frills local places, the food stalls, meals are incredibly affordable. We're talking full, filling dinners for maybe $5 to $15 FJD.
Let's really emphasize that value. 15 Fijian dollars is around $7.50 US. You can get an authentic Fijian curry rice for less than maybe a coffee and a pastry back home.
Right.
Now, contrast that sharply with the mid-range restaurants, the ones aimed more at tourists or business folks in Suva. Meals there, they jump up instantly. $20 to $40 FJD, maybe even for lunch.
Wow.
That huge price difference just by walking maybe a block away from the main tourist strip. That's the key to affordability in Fiji.
So cultural immersion, like you said, directly linked to saving money. And Viti Levu is where you nail that strategy.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pivot a bit to Nadi.
Nadi's a necessity, obviously. It's the airport hub. It often gets treated just as a stopover. You land, grab a taxi, head straight for the coast or the ferry terminal.
Yeah, get me to the beach.
Exactly. But Nadi itself and the area right around it, it's actually worthwhile for a day or two. There are things to do.
Okay, so what's the specific must-see near Nadi? Something that keeps us grounded in nature, even right by the airport bustle.
That would have to be the Garden of the Sleeping Giant. It's tucked away in the foothills just outside Nadi. Internationally known for its absolutely stunning orchid collection. It's huge. It was originally started by the actor Raymond Burr, from Perry Mason.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it offers this beautiful, peaceful, really well-kept jungle walk. It's just perfect after a long flight.
And
Sort of eases you in.
And the cost for this little piece of tranquility?
Entry cost is right around $15 FJD, so again, very reasonable.
About $7.50 US.
Yeah, a relatively small price for a big return in natural beauty. If you spend time there, you realize Viti Levu, even near its main entry points, still delivers unique nature and quiet moments right away, before you even commit to the cost and hassle of inter-island travel.
Okay, so Viti Levu is kind of our necessary cultural and financial training ground. That makes sense. We get history in Suva, learn how to eat locally and save money, ease into the natural beauty near Nadi. It sets up the multiple dimensions of a Fiji trip beyond just, sitting on a beach chair.
It really is the bedrock. You get context, you spend affordably, and importantly, you start to feel that Bila culture, that famous Fijian warmth and hospitality. You experience that before you commit to the higher costs and logistics of getting to those postcard perfect islands everyone dreams of.
And those famous visuals bring us right to section 2.
Mm-hmm.
The Mamanuca and Yasawa Islands.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is where the budget equation gets really complex, right? These island chains are the undisputed crown jewels, the ones known everywhere for pristine beaches and possibly warm waters and, world-class snorkeling and diving.
This is absolutely the destination for the water experience. The visibility underwater here is often just stunning. 60 to 100 feet isn't unusual.
Wow.
The coral reefs are phenomenal, soft corals, hard corals, and you'll see lots of marine life. Turtles, rays, often reef sharks, the harmless kind usually.
Okay.
But like you said, this is where the budget variance becomes extreme. You have to be really strategic here.
Let's talk about that divergence in accommodation costs first, because this feels like the make or break element for a lot of people planning a trip.
The range is just astronomical. You basically have two distinct camps. For budget travelers, especially in the southern Yasawas, you can find simple beachfront hostels. And I mean right on the sand. They can start around $40 per night, which sounds like incredible value for a remote island.
$40 sounds amazing, but I have to challenge that figure a bit. If I book a $40 hostel on a remote island, what am I actually sacrificing? Like reliable power, safe drinking water? Is there a hidden cost to that super low price?
That's a brilliant question, and it gets right to the real trade-off. Yes, you are sacrificing infrastructure. Absolutely. That $40 will typically get you a dorm bed, shared bathroom, often cold water showers, and maybe limited electricity from a generator for just a few hours in the evening.
Okay.
But here's the crucial part. That $40 budget often does not include the mandatory meal plan.
Mandatory meal plan.
Yes. On most remote islands, you have literally no other dining options, so they require you buy their meal package. That can easily add another $50 to $70 FJD per day.
So wait, that's another, what, 25 to 35 US on top?
Exactly. So that $40 room quickly becomes closer to a $65, $75 minimum daily spend just for bed and basic food.
Okay, that completely reframes the budget. That mandatory meal plan is a critical detail people need to know.
It is. Absolutely vital. Now let's look at the other end, luxury travelers. Booking into those high-end Mamanuca resorts, the ones with private plunge pools, 5-star service, private beaches, they can easily charge $400 US or more per night. And that's often just the base rate.
Right before activities, transport.
Exactly. That excludes required activities, private boat transfers, high-end dining. The $400 resort is selling exclusivity, consistent power, air conditioning, maybe access to private reef areas.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though, because while the accommodation costs are wildly different, $40-ish plus meals versus $400 plus everything else, the cost of the actual activities seems more standardized, right? Everyone's accessing the same ocean.
That's the crucial metric for the traveler focused on experiences. The price to jump into that turquoise water is fairly fixed, regardless of where you sleep. Day trips for snorkeling or island hopping generally cost between $70 and $150 US dollars. The variance there is usually about how long the trip is half day, full day, and if lunch is included.
Okay. And for those who really want to go deep, the scuba divers.
Scuba diving costs are pretty competitive globally, actually. A single tank dive generally runs about $100 to $150 US. The dive operators, whether they're based at a fancy resort or a backpacker island, have to follow strict safety standards. So the quality of the dive itself is often quite similar.
What differs then?
Maybe just the luxury of the dive boat itself or the fanciness of the rental gear. For surface stuff, kayaking, paddleboarding, widely available, usually start around 20-30 US per hour, an affordable way to explore right off the beach.
These islands aren't just about water sports, though. They're also a key place for cultural connection, like through traditional village visits.
Yes, and this brings us to what I'd call a cultural must experience, participating in a Kava ceremony. Kava is just integral to Fijian social life, to custom. It's this earthy drink, non-alcoholic, but it has a mild narcotic effect. It's made from the pounded roots of a pepper plant, Pypmethysticum.
Okay, so if a traveler gets invited to a ceremony, what's the etiquette? What's the social significance? We need to give context beyond just, it's a drink.
Good point. The ceremony is all about respect, welcoming, sharing within the community. It's actually quite formal. You should sit cross-legged,
Yeah.
dress modestly so, no hats, cover your shoulders.
Okay.
When you're offered the kava bowl, the bailo, you clap once, accept it, drink it down fairly slowly. It doesn't taste great, honestly. Then hand the bowl back and clap 3 times. That's the basic ritual. The immediate physical effect is a slight numbing feeling in your mouth and tongue. Then comes this deeply relaxed, sort of sedate feeling. People often call it a social relaxant.
Interesting.
The ceremony itself can last for hours, depending on the occasion. And the experience itself, priceless for really understanding Fijian culture and this concept they call venua.
Venua.
Yeah, it means like connection to the land, connection to the community. It's deep.
Okay, so the strategy for the Mamanucas and Yasawas seems pretty clear then. You either pay that premium price for the exclusive high-infrastructure resort, or you save massively on where you sleep, maybe dealing with fewer comforts. So you can maximize your budget for the activities and cultural experiences, which are pretty much equally available to everyone.
That's exactly it. It's the ultimate trade-off. Infrastructure versus experience. Do you need the air conditioning and the infinity pool? Or are you happy with a basic beachfront burr that's a Fijian cabin if it means you can afford 2 extra dive trips and maybe get more involved in local village life?
Okay, let's move back to the main island, Viti Levu, but focus specifically on the Coral Coast now. This area feels like a fantastic middle ground. It offers a really compelling blend of natural beauty, accessibility, and comfort, especially for that mid-range traveler.
The Coral Coast really is the strategic compromise, but in a good way. It runs along Viti Levu's southern and western shoreline, basically linking Nadi and Suva by road. It's appealing because, yes, it has beautiful beaches, but crucially, it also has incredibly accessible coral reefs right offshore. Often you can just snorkel straight from the beach.
Oh, nice.
Plus, it has a high concentration of local cultural villages that are easy to get to by road. That eliminates the need for those expensive, time-consuming inter-island ferry trips.
So it's almost like a comprehensive destination all on its own. You can get that Fiji experience without dedicating a huge chunk of money and time just to ferry travel.
Precisely. And for nature lovers, there's a very specific and actually quite dramatic natural spot there, the Sigatoka Sand Dunes National Park. This was Fiji's first national park. It's this vast, really impressive system of sand dunes, some rising up to 200 feet, constantly being reshaped by the wind.
Sand dunes in Fiji.
Yeah. It provides this striking, almost desolate geological contrast to the lush tropical greenery Fiji is famous for.
That geological diversity is really interesting. What's the experience like for someone who hikes there?
It's actually surprisingly strenuous. It's usually hot, dry, walking on sand, but it gives you amazing views over the Sigatoka River mouth and the coastline. It's also an important archaeological site. They found ancient Lapita pottery there, even burial sites.
Wow.
It's easy to reach by road, and the entry fee is modest, around $10 US. Definitely a unique must-do if you're staying on the Coral Coast.
And culturally, that accessibility continues.
Right.
A lot of the resorts along the Coral Coast offer traditional Fijian ceremonies right there on site. Makes it easy for guests to get guided access to the culture without needing long bus rides to remote villages.
Yes. And it's good to clarify what those usually involve. Often they'll showcase the make, that's traditional storytelling, through song and dance. Or they might put on a lovo feast, where food is cooked traditionally in an underground earth oven. The result kind of acts as a curator, making the experience polished and easy to access. For the mid-range traveler, that combination of comfort and cultural availability is pretty hard to beat.
And this accessibility translates directly into a really accommodation sweet spot price-wise.
Yeah.
Tell us about the mid-range prices here.
Well, because it's on the main island, with good road access, the operating costs for hotels are just lower than for isolated island resorts. And the prices reflect that. You can find backpacker hostels on the Coral Coast starting incredibly low, sometimes as low as 15 US per night for a dorm bed.
$15.
Ah. Yeah, that really makes longer-term travel genuinely affordable.
$15 a night puts Fiji within reach of almost any traveler, really, if they're okay with sharing a room.
Absolutely. And then the mid-range resorts places offering private rooms, reliable facilities, maybe a decent pool, they're highly competitive, typically running from about 100 to 200 US per night.
Okay, that's a popular bracket.
Yeah, it perfectly balances comfort and having amenities without that massive price jump you see for getting to the private islands. And even the local cafes along the Coral Coast maintain that affordable dining strategy we talked about earlier. Still $5 to $15 FJD for a good meal.
So the Coral Coast really serves as an excellent option for travelers who want comfort, great beaches, cultural exposure, but maybe want to avoid the high cost and the sometimes complex logistics of constant inter-island travel. It's a very comprehensive kind of middle path destination right there on Viti Levu.
It's really the definition of efficiency, isn't it? Accessible infrastructure combined with stunning natural beauty and culture. It lets you tick all the main Fiji boxes without draining your travel fund just on getting around.
Okay, now let's talk about a growing sector, one that seems to appeal specifically to the modern, maybe more adventurous and ethically minded traveler: adventure and ecotourism. The travel sources we looked at really emphasize that Fiji is absolutely more than just beaches.
That's such a crucial distinction to make. While the west side of Fiji, like the Mamanucas, gets the spotlight for those calm turquoise lagoons. The interior of Viti Levu, and especially the eastern islands like Tavuni, they're dominated by dramatic, lush, volcanic rainforests.
Right.
Fiji is increasingly popular as an ecotourism destination. People are coming for challenging rainforest hikes, incredible waterfall tours, visiting marine reserves that highlight conservation work.
It's proof that the adventure traveler is definitely well served here, too. For instance, you mentioned Tavuyuni, often called the Garden Isle. That's where you find the spectacular Tavoro waterfalls, right? In Boma National Heritage Park.
Exactly. The Tavoro waterfalls are a perfect example of that interior beauty. Boma National Park actually has 3 distinct waterfall tiers. They're accessible by trails that are well-maintained but can be challenging in places. The first, lowest falls are pretty easy to reach, great for a swim.
Nice.
But to get to the highest tier, you're looking at a proper jungle hike, probably 3-4 hours round trip, maybe longer. You're navigating tree roots, slippery slopes.
So a bit of effort involved.
Definitely an investment in effort.
Yeah.
But the reward is seeing that incredibly rich, unique rainforest ecosystem up close.
And what are the costs associated with that specific adventure? Like going to Tavoro?
Typically, you pay an entry fee to the park, maybe $10 to $15 FJD, so $5 to $7 US. For those who prefer a guide, or maybe need transportation organized from their accommodation, a guided hike, often including the transport, usually runs around $50 US.
Okay.
That ensures you don't get lost, plus the guide can provide really valuable context about the plants, the animals, the local significance.
These kinds of activities feel essential because they really speak to that conscious travel trend we're seeing for 2026 and beyond. This isn't just about selling a hike, it's about selling maybe ethical engagement with nature.
Absolutely. We're seeing a significant rise in sustainable resorts and guest houses, places that prioritize low environmental impact, hiring locals, managing waste properly. This trend also shows up in the growing availability of volunteer opportunities, things like helping with coral reef restoration or maybe local school building projects. It's for travelers who genuinely want to engage and, give back in some way during their trip.
So the analysis suggests that modern travelers are actively looking for destinations where their visit can have a positive impact, not just be a passive vacation.
Precisely. These options appeal directly to that learner-traveler profile we often talk about. Someone who prioritizes ethical engagement right alongside the adventure. It's about consuming travel responsibly, knowing your dollars are supporting sustainable efforts or maybe local village infrastructure, rather than just flowing out to large international hotel chains. And Fiji seems to be adapting pretty quickly to offer that balance. They recognize their natural assets are their primary economic driver and have to be protected.
That brings us perfectly to the most practical section of our deep dive: the actual costs and how you strategize your budget for 2026. We confirmed the currency is the Fijian dollar, FJD roughly 2.1 with USD. But let's talk strategy.
Strategy is everything here. While we've mentioned the luxury end, it's vital to reiterate that real budget travel is absolutely possible in Fiji with careful planning. But we do need to address the elephant in the room: the thing we haven't really factored into the daily budget yet.
Which is the single largest expense for most travelers? The international airfare to actually get there.
Right. Good point.
Yeah.
You can't plan a trip to Fiji without acknowledging the cost of just getting to Fiji in the first place.
Correct. For most international travelers, especially coming from North America, Europe, even from Australia or New Zealand, the cost of flights in 2026 will likely be somewhere between $800 and $1,500 per person. That depends heavily, of course, on the season, where you're flying from, how far in advance you book.
That's a big chunk up front.
It is. And that initial outlay really demands that your daily expenses on the ground are carefully managed to make the whole trip worthwhile financially. Okay, so with that large initial flight cost as context, what's the clear metric for a comfortable mid-range trip? The kind of trip that balances comfort and experience without completely breaking the bank.
Okay, based on synthesizing all the cost data we looked at, that critical budget benchmark for a daily mid-range traveler seems to fall between $100 and $180 per day. This covers comfortable travel, not luxury, but comfortable. And we can break that down to show how it's achievable.
Yeah, that's the actionable insight we need. How does that $100 to $180 range actually get spent on a typical day?
Okay, so a tighter budget within that range, say closer to $100, $120 US, might look like this. Maybe $40 US for a decent hostel or budget guest house room, could be shared facilities. Then maybe $30-40 US for food, focusing on local eateries or markets, leaving you maybe $30-50 US for local transport, like a bus or a smaller activity, or saving up for a bigger one.
Okay.
If you're hitting the top end, around $180 US daily. You're probably spending roughly $80-$100 US on mid-range accommodation, maybe a private room on the Coral Coast with AC, then maybe $40-50 on food, perhaps including one slightly nicer meal. And that leaves you around $40-60 for a major activity like a full-day snorkeling trip, maybe a scuba dive, if you average it out over a few days.
Right, allows for more flexibility.
Exactly. That $180 allows for flexibility and comfort. Anything consistently less than $100 US a day, that's real, tight, restrictive budget backpacker territory.
Transportation logistics are the next big cost challenge, especially if your goal is visiting those postcard outer islands, which, as we said, are expensive to reach. You basically have two main choices for inter-island travel.
The first, and often the most scenic, is using the inter-island ferry system. Companies like Yasawa Flyer are well known. The cost for these rides really depends on how far you're going. To the nearby Mamanucas, maybe $30-50 US one way. To the further Yasawas, it could be $80-$100 US one way.
And that adds up if you island hop.
It does, and the downside is time. These ferries can eat up a big chunk of your day, often 3 to 5 hours for the longer routes, sometimes with multiple stops.
But if time is money, or if you're trying to reach one of the really distant islands like Tavuni up north, or Viti Levu, the domestic flight becomes necessary, doesn't it?
Right. Flying domestically is significantly faster, maybe 45 minutes versus 5 hours on a boat. But it's substantially costlier. You're looking at between $100 and $150 US per ticket generally. And critically, that price is only if you book well in advance. We saw data showing that last-minute domestic flights, especially during peak tourist season, can easily spike to $200, even $250 US one way.
Ouch. That destroys the daily budget.
Instantly. So booking ahead, especially for those domestic flights, pays the biggest dividends for keeping costs manageable.
And circling back to food one last time, we really can't overstate the importance of that food cost strategy, especially when you contrast eating locally on Viti Levu with those unavoidable, often expensive meal plans on the remote islands.
Yeah, the food strategy necessity really comes down to where you are. If you're on Viti Levu or even parts of the Coral Coast, you absolutely must embrace local life. Eat at the markets, find the small roadside cafes. We established that $5 to $15 FJD price point, like $2.50 to $7.50 US per meal. It's doable.
Right.
However, if you're on a remote Mamanuca or Yasawa island, where one resort basically holds a monopoly on dining, you often cannot avoid their mandatory meal plan. And we said that runs $50 to $70 FJD, minimum $25 to $35 US per day, just for basic meals.
And if you choose not to do the meal plan, if that's even an option?
Well, if you choose a la carte dining at a resort, a single dinner entree could easily run $50 to $80 FJD. That's $25 to $40 US for one dish.
That's potentially 10 times the cost of local meal back on Viti Levu. So the secret to affordability, even when you're out on those remote islands, lies in choosing accommodation that helps you manage that food cost. Either finding a guest house that maybe have kitchen access, though that's rare, or accepting that the budget guest house meal plan is just a non-negotiable part of the daily cost.
Exactly. The secret to overall affordability is always embracing the local culture and using the local infrastructure where possible, guest houses, local eateries, local buses. These local choices aren't just cheaper, they almost always provide a richer, more authentic cultural experience. And they allow you to reallocate your savings towards those activities, the diving, the snorkeling, the village visits, which have more standardized costs anyway.
Okay, so we've covered the geography, the culture, the activities, the specific costs for different types of travelers. I think it's time for the final verdict. Based on all the evidence we've unpacked, is Fiji worth it in 2026?
Yes. I think the definitive conclusion from our sources is that Fiji is absolutely worth it in 2026. The value proposition is extremely strong, especially for travelers prioritizing those postcard-perfect beaches, the vibrant underwater life, and genuinely warm, immersive cultural experiences. And that consistent bula welcome, that hospitality that seems to be a stable element you get across all price points, from hostel to luxury resort.
But the worth it verdict feels conditional on the traveler's expectations. Who is this beautiful place maybe not for?
That's a fair qualifier. Fiji might not be the best fit for travelers seeking intense urban energy, huge cities, or like nonstop high energy nightlife. That's not really its focus. The
Yeah.
focus here is overwhelmingly on natural beauty, relaxation, water activities, and cultural connection. And critically, if you're a traveler who absolutely demands flawless five-star Western infrastructure everywhere, perfect roads, instant and constant high-speed Wi-Fi, highly refined international dining everywhere you go, you can find that in certain resorts, but you will pay a massive, massive premium for it. And you might find the logistics challenging once you venture away from those specific luxury bubbles or off the main island.
Okay, so we can conclude that the worth is conditional. It's definitely worth it for travelers who prioritize stunning landscapes and genuine cultural connection, more than, perhaps, luxury and sheer convenience alone. Provided, and this is the key, provided they strategically manage their accommodation and transport costs to save their budget for the actual experiences Fiji offers.
That is the essential trade-off, summed up perfectly. Luxury is available, but it comes at an exceptionally high price tag in Fiji. But authenticity and that incredible natural beauty, that's available too. And it's accessible even on tighter budgets if you employ those strategies we discuss, like leveraging Viti Levu and choosing accommodation wisely.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener, trying to chart your course?
It means, hopefully, that you now have the tools to tailor your Fiji trip exactly to your financial comfort level. You can still experience those essential paradise elements without feeling pressured to book the $400 resort if your main goal is, say, the $150 dive trip or experiencing a Kava ceremony.
Right.
Use the main island, Viti Levu, for cultural context and cheap, amazing food. Then choose your outer island accommodation strategically, always, always factoring in those mandatory meal plan costs if you're heading somewhere remote.
That feels like the perfect breakdown. But as always, we want to leave you with one final, maybe provocative thought to mull over as you plan. We talked a lot about the vast difference in costs, local guest houses starting around $15.40 USAA versus high-end resorts charging $400 or much more, considering that the pristine beauty of those remote islands is the major draw for many. How does a conscious traveler balance that desire for remote, untouched locations with the, perhaps, imperative of supporting local Fijian economies outside of those big, often foreign-owned international resort chains?
Yeah, the question really becomes, how do you spend your travel dollars to maximize both your personal experience and your positive ethical impact on the communities who are the traditional custodians of those incredible landscapes? That connection between travel choices, ethics, and economic impact, that's maybe the most important consideration for planning travel to any major destination like Fiji in 2026. Something to think about.
We really hope this deep dive helps you chart your course to Fiji, whatever your budget might be. We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.